Hi guys, welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. I'm Nivedita Rajay and I'm here with an announcement. So there has been a change in the CLAT paper and it was announced yesterday by the consortium. What is the change? What does the change entail? क्या आपकी preparation में कोई change आना चाहिए? Is there a new way you need to prepare? Is there a new strategy you need? Everything is going to be discussed in this session. Hello everyone, how are you all? Good evening guys. So I know बहुत सारे skepticism आ रहे हैं. Many people are wondering what has happened now. You know, at the end, why are they even changing the pattern? Well, calling it a pattern change might not be correct. It is actually the change in the number of questions. So this is what the consortium declared yesterday. The executive committee of the consortium of NLU, this is the actually paper notification. This is the syllabus and format. So the UG CLAT for admission shall comprise, just hold on a minute, 120 questions. Okay, 120 questions instead of 150. As in the previous years, candidate will have 2 hours to complete the test as in previous years. Now, as per the latest release, CLAT has decreased the number of questions. The questions used to be 150, you were given 120 minutes total. Now the questions have been reduced to 120, the time remains the same. Abhi bhi 120 minutes hai. The pattern also remains the same as the notification says. The 120 questions will be organized in the same 5 sections, which is English language, current affairs, GK, legal reasoning and logical and quantitative. Right, so the sections remain the same, the pattern remains the same, the passages, the questions would still be on a passage format. The only change that has happened is the decrease in the number of questions. It might be a very good news, एक बहुत अच्छी खबर है, you know, relaxes the burden. Students might feel a little bit easy now that they don't have to face as many questions. Previously, you had less than a minute for one question and that is where the game was. The pattern hasn't changed. Like I said, the questions will be the same. The question pattern will remain the same. You would still be tested on a passage-based test. Okay, so the only change that has happened is in the number of questions. उसके अलावा कुछ भी बदला नहीं है. पैसेज वाले ही क्वेश्चंस आएंगे, उसी तरह से आएंगे. अब बाइफरकेशन किस तरह से होगा वो हम बाद में डिस्कस करेंगे. राइट, सो देयर इज डेफिनेटली एन एडवांटेज. द एडवांटेज बीइंग दैट you know previously the students did not have as much time per se. You had less than a minute for one single question. Now you have about a minute, about 60 seconds for each question or a minute for each questions. Statistically, if you divide 120 minutes, 120 questions, you have 1 minute for every question, which definitely gives you an edge. अगर आप जीके में किसी तरह से मेकअप कर लेते हैं तो आप बाकी सेक्शंस पे ज़्यादा ध्यान दे सकते हैं. राइट, नाउ द थिंग इज, एज यू कैन सी, द पैटर्न रिमेन्स द सेम. अभी भी पैटर्न सेम ही है. The major thing that that students are wondering about, since the number of questions have increased, what actually changes? अब questions 150 से 120 हो गए हैं. There has been a 20% dip in the number of questions. What does it mean? Does it mean that the merit will go lower? Or does it mean that the competition will be lesser? Does it mean that we don't have to work as much? Do we need a different strategy? Would there be a different kind of a mock? No. 20% dip in the questions we definitely have. You would have more time to read the passages, of course 1 minute for every questions, and you would have more time to attend a question from 50 seconds to 1 minute. This is the advantage that you have. But the misgivings that students might have with regard to the change is कि क्योंकि dip हो गया है, 20% questions have been decreased, does it mean that the cutoff will also be lower? No. 20% dip doesn't mean that the cutoff would also decrease by 20%. At max, the final cutoff might dip to 5 to 6 marks. 5 से 6 मार्क्स का अंतर आ सकता है जो जनरल कट ऑफ रहती है. इफ यू आर मे बी एमिंग फॉर अ टॉप नॉच कॉलेज, द आइडियल स्कोर टू गेट इनटू अ हाई रैंकिंग NLU यूज्ड टू बी समवेयर अराउंड 110 or more than that. So if you are between 110 to 120, it was, there was a very good chance that you would end up with a very good college. Or even if you have 100 marks in your pocket after you have qualified or after you have taken CLAT, तो भी बहुत अच्छे chances थे कि आपको एक high ranking NLU मिलेगा. 100 used to be the ideal score to ensure your seat in the CLAT. But now since there has been a dip, it doesn't mean कि 100 से अब 80 हो जाएगा. No, it doesn't happen that way. The decrease might be 95. 90 से 95 में भी आपको एक decent college मिल जाएगा. अब ये change होगा, right? थोड़ा सा कट ऑफ जो नीचे जाता है, which is generally 80, 70, even 60 depending on what college it is, there would be a 5-6 marks reduction, but not much. So do not think that you don't need to work as hard, you need lesser marks to qualify CLAT. No, you don't. There are other challenges that you would be facing since the number of questions have decreased. Overall competition और बढ़ गया है. The competition remains the same number of students would be taking. मार्क्स कैसे होंगे मतलब? Yes, that is one thing. Iram has pointed out a very relevant fact. Instead of working on time, you can focus more on accuracy. That would definitely help you. But time is again an agent that you cannot dilly-dally with. You really need to take into account that time is important. आपको अभी भी accuracy के साथ साथ time का भी ध्यान रखना है. Because then you would have, a chance to maybe even revise the questions that you have attempted. Anyhow, so since the competition remains the same, उतने ही बच्चे exam दे रहे हैं, the same number of students would be appearing in the exam. The only change is the dip in the overall, number of questions. इसकी वजह से ranks जो है वो condense हो जाएंगी. मतलब एक shorter window में बहुत सारी ranks होंगी. जितने कम मार्क्स का पेपर होता है उतनी सेम रैंकिंग पे बहुत सारे बच्चे आ जाते हैं. तो इसका मतलब है कि 0.25 में भी बहुत सा डिफरेंस आ जाएगा. Usually if you ended up losing maybe 4-5 marks due to negative marking, it did not create an impact on the overall score because the score was out of 150 and there were multiple students on the same pedestal. The competition was larger. Now that the merit or the final score is 120, you have to score out of 120. Every 0.25 matters क्योंकि 0.25 से ही आपकी रैंक बदल जाएगी. 4-5 मार्क्स में बहुत सारी रैंक्स का डिफरेंस आ सकता है जो कि 150 के स्कोर में नहीं होता था. तो अभी रैंक्स कंसाइज हो गई हैं, कंपटीशन उतना ही है. अब आपको एक एक क्वेश्चन के लिए मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी. एक भी क्वेश्चन गलत होता है 0.25 मार्क भी आपको आपके मन का NLU हो सकता है ना दिला पाए. If you are not serious about the paper, if you are not taking care of the negative marking, if you are casual about the fact that the paper is a negative marking scheme based paper, then you might end up losing a lot of marks. Even if you lose 2-3 marks, it would significantly affect your rank, and that is the disadvantage of lesser number of questions. Then the possible cutoff for top 3 NLUs will be reduced by maximum 5%. Like I said, top 10 NLUs may be by 10% and the remaining NLUs may be by 10 to 15%, not 10 to 12%, sorry, not by 20%. 20% मार्क्स कम हुए हैं लेकिन कट ऑफ में बहुत ज़्यादा डिफरेंस अभी भी नहीं आएगा. ओके, इस बात को बहुत अच्छे से ध्यान रखना है. Can there be a change in the syllabus instead of passages? Unlikely. If they wanted to announce a change, they would have done it right now. There are just 5 months remaining for the exam. It is already, what day is today? I think it's 17th, right? So the June is almost over. There are just 13 to 13 days remaining for this month. You have 5 months for the exam. They would not make such announcement in such a short time. 25 के लिए you cannot be sure, but it's very unlikely that the pattern would change. The number of questions, of course, considering the pattern of the paper, CLAT was indeed a very lengthy and a very difficult paper. Now it relaxes students a little bit since the questions are not as many, but CLAT still remains a difficult paper because the constraints or the factors that stopped you from qualifying CLAT or that affected your score remain the same. अभी भी reading उतनी ही ज़रूरी है. The students who are avid readers and who listened to me when I used to tell them all the time that reading is something that you cannot get away without, or you cannot ignore. Basically, if you are not reading properly, if you're not reading efficiently, if you're not reading with attention, with focus, CLAT is not your cup of tea. You won't be able to qualify CLAT. The factor remains unchanged. So students who worked on their reading skill and have developed it significantly would definitely benefit from the fact that there are lesser number of passages now. Students who have not paid attention to my advice even a little bit, then you would face the same problem that students faced when the questions were 150. So reading, efficiency, accuracy, attention, comprehension, focus, all the essentials that were there, that were prerequisites for this exam, are still very important. Do not take them lightly. How do you adapt to the new pattern? You need to increase your accuracy. Now that time is a factor that is a little bit relaxed, it is not extremely relaxed. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप बिल्कुल ही इग्नोर कर सकते हैं टाइम लिमिट को. अब तो 2 घंटे में 120 क्वेश्चंस करने, I have a lot of time. You actually don't. Some students are very, slow in reading. It takes time to decipher a passage and then apply the principles in the given questions. It does take time. So if your reading along with the accuracy is not up to date, is not as it is required, you need to work on it. You still have 5 months remaining. You need to get your basics strong. We take classes all the time on YouTube. We are discussing basic concepts, advanced concepts, the concepts that you need for your exam, the current concepts, the legal current concepts, the concepts that might be there in English or logical or quants, GK and legal. Everything is being discussed on YouTube, on the portal. You need to attend those sessions. Now is the time. अगर आपको accuracy बढ़ानी है तो आपको sessions attend करने पड़ेंगे. इनके बिना accuracy नहीं बढ़ पाएगी. Accuracy concept से build होती है. If you are familiar with the concept, if you know a concept well, it is very likely that you would perform well in that passage because you would be solving that passage with better accuracy since you know what is there in the passage. इसीलिए sessions, classes बहुत ज़रूरी है. Concept building becomes very important now that the questions are less. The new pattern will be updated immediately. We would introduce this change immediately. Like basic strong, leverage the extra time per question. अब ये जो time है जो आपको extra मिल गया है, इसको आपको efficiently use करना है. GK के exam में when you are taking mocks, you can afford to solve GK in lesser amount of time because like I said, GK is a section which is a very yes or no kind of a section. Either you know an answer or you don't know an answer. So if you do know it, mark it. If you don't know it, just leave it because you are not going to get that answer in the entire 120 minutes. Just leave it. Instead of guessing or instead of pondering over it, instead of trying to guess what the answer might be, just leave the answer. That is the best thing that you can do for yourself when it is a negative marking paper. जीके में जब आपके कम टाइम खर्च होगा क्योंकि क्वेश्चंस अब कम है, 35 क्वेश्चंस हुआ करते थे, अब 35 से कम हो जाएंगे, राइट? तो वहां पे आपको एक्स्ट्रा टाइम मिल गया. नाउ दैट एक्स्ट्रा टाइम can be utilized in the other sections. For example, legal most probably would still remain the lengthiest section and it might still contain the maximum number of questions. We shall see it later on. CLAT बताएगा कि किस तरह से क्या change हुआ number of questions में, how will affect the percentage of the questions in each section. Then you have to take at least 2 to 3 mocks in the next month. Why do you need it? Whenever CLAT has changed the pattern has changed once, the number of questions have been decreased once or twice. So there used to be 200 questions, they were reduced to 150. Then 150 questions were completely asked in a different manner. So whenever the CLAT has announced a change in the number of questions or in the patterns, they always move to an easy level of paper. जो लेवल होता है पेपर का वो हमेशा चेंज के बाद इजी हो जाता है. तो आप ये अज्यूम कर सकते हैं, यू माइट अज्यूम दैट this year's paper might be on the easier side, but then we cannot say this for sure. We are only assuming it. Since they have reduced the number of questions, it cannot be conclusively determined whether they would make it an easy exam or a difficult exam. If they have decreased the number of questions, they might choose to make it a difficult exam, or on a level which is between easy and difficult. The point is that you need to be prepared for everything. Easy हो, hard हो, medium हो, किसी भी तरह का level हो, you need to be prepared for every kind of level that there might be. Now, how do you do that? You do that by practicing mocks. The exam is only 5 months away. You need to start taking mocks, as many as you can. Ideally, you should be taking at least 2 mocks every week. If you are wondering where to get mocks from, you can get the access of mocks from the BYJU'S exam prep portal. We give you over 10,000 questions to practice. Along with these mocks, you need to start practicing on the topics. The topic test, you need to work on your strengths and weaknesses alike. एक और प्रॉब्लम हो जाती है क्योंकि नंबर ऑफ क्वेश्चंस चेंज हो गए हैं. यू माइट बी वेरी गुड इन जीके, हो सकता है जीके के क्वेश्चंस कम कर दिए जाएं और इंग्लिश के बढ़ा दिए जाएं और आप इंग्लिश में अच्छे नहीं हैं. या हो सकता है आपको लगे कि मैं इंग्लिश में तो बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं हूँ लेकिन मेरी मैथ्स अच्छी है. हो सकता है कि इंग्लिश के क्वेश्चंस बढ़ा के मैथ्स के क्वेश्चंस कम कर दिए जाएं. Now the problem is that the strengths and the weaknesses that you have, or that you strategized on playing with, are not functioning right now because we don't know how many questions there are going to be. आपके फेवरेट सेक्शंस के क्वेश्चंस कम हो सकते हैं. द सेक्शंस दैट यू एब्सोल्युटली हेट माइट हैव मोर नंबर ऑफ क्वेश्चंस. We don't know how many questions are going to be there until the consortium declares. So you need to work on your strengths and weaknesses alike. अगर कोई सेक्शन वीक है, कोई टॉपिक वीक है, तो उस टॉपिक पे ज़्यादा मेहनत करनी है. अब इसको कैसे करना है? How do you do it? The BYJU'S exam portal give you topic test. Sectional test मतलब English का test, logical test, quantitative test. But then we also have topic tests. What do these tests mean? इसका मतलब है, if there is, let's say, simple interest or profit loss questions that you are struggling with, BYJU'S will give you questions only on these topics: simple interest, profit and loss, ratio, proportion. Similarly, topics in contracts: void and void agreements, voidable agreements, frustrated contracts and stuff like this. Negligence, vicarious, strict liability. Questions only from these topics. Now, when you start working on these topics, when you start working on your strategy topic wise, you are working on your weaknesses properly. So this is what you need to do. You need to take as many topic tests as you can. Go to the BYJU'S exam prep portal, download the app immediately, do as many tests as you can. In fact, I would suggest that you do one test every day. 10,000 से ऊपर क्वेश्चंस है आपके प्रैक्टिस के लिए. पूरे 1 साल तक रोज भी करेंगे तो भी खत्म नहीं होंगे. तो अभी से करना शुरू करिए. Analyze how well you're doing with the new pattern. Now that the pattern has changed, you would be taking the new mocks, would be incorporated almost immediately. जो नया मॉक आएगा, इनफैक्ट आज से ही, कल से ही, वो सब नए पैटर्न पे आएंगे, 120 क्वेश्चंस के साथ आएंगे. आप इमीडिएटली मॉक्स को सॉल्व करना शुरू करिए. इमीडिएटली take the mock that is based on the new pattern. This is how you are going to analyze कि आपको ये पैटर्न किस तरह से सूट कर रहा है, आपके एडवांटेज पे है या डिसएडवांटेज पे. BYJU'S is going to release its first mock tomorrow or day after tomorrow. The information will be given to you. You immediately take that mock, try to solve 120 questions in 120 minutes and see how you performed. Is your score better than what it used to be, or has it gone lower? इफ इट हैज गॉन लोअर, आपने कुछ गलती करी, आप ज्यादा रिलैक्स्ड हो गए, आपने ठीक से नहीं किया, आपको टॉपिक्स क्लियर नहीं थे, फिगर आउट द वीकनेसेस इन दैट मॉक एंड स्टार्ट वर्किंग ऑन योर वीकनेसेस immediately. The sooner you adapt to the new pattern, the better your score will be in the upcoming mocks. ट्राई डिफरेंट स्ट्रैटेजीज टू अटेम्प्ट मॉक. जो भी स्ट्रैटेजी आपके फेवर में है. जीके अगर आपको लगता है कि पहले करना चाहिए तो पहले करिए. लीगल अगर आपको लगता है कि पहले करना चाहिए, आई एम मोर कंफर्टेबल विद लीगल, लेट मी अटेम्प्ट लीगल फर्स्ट एंड देन आई वुड मूव ओवर टू द अदर सेक्शंस. Do whatever it is that suits you, but make sure that you're doing it. After trying out multiple strategies, because you still have time, you still have 5 months remaining. After trying out multiple strategies, choose the strategy that suits you the best, that keeps your score on the high, and continue with that strategy till the end of the session, or till the end of the when you have exam. Okay, passages will be more tough now. What about the mocks we are solving? Like I told you, Suhasini, the change in the pattern is affected immediately on our portal. You will get new mocks even today. When is my other class? At 6 actually. My other class is at 6 p.m. Now, what is it that you need to look out for? You need to look out for another notification that the consortium might release. Like I said, the number of questions or the break in the number of questions is not predictable. We cannot say for sure how many questions are going to be there. Legal में how many questions would be there? How is it that they are going to demarcate between the sections now that they have only 120 questions remaining? So I am assuming that there might be a decrease of 1 passage each from every section. We'll have to see that. Consortium will definitely tell us what changes or how the paper is going to be after they release their first sample paper. These sample papers are very helpful. Last year, the sample papers that they released in the legal reasoning section, most of the sample papers, and especially the last one, had only yes and no kind of questions. And we predicted that these might be a general thing, or they might actually ask maximum questions from this pattern, the yes and no questions. That is exactly what happened. Out of 40, 27 questions were based on yes and no pattern. So the consortium, when releases a sample paper, it does not give you a hint about the syllabus, but it does give you a hint on the kind of questions it might be asking. So the number of questions that it would have in the sample paper can be said to be the number of questions that would be there in the final paper as well. But until the sample paper comes out, we cannot conclude anything. That's it for today, guys. Like I said, the pattern has not changed. The change has been in the number of questions, but the number of questions decreased does not mean that you do not need to look out for anything. You do need to be more careful. You need to make sure that you are taking care of everything. Concepts, revision, practice. Now, if you are doing it on your own, well, then that's entirely your choice. But 5 months remaining, you really cannot take this exam lightly anymore. Who knows what they're going to do next? So in order to be completely prepared, I would suggest that you go for a proper guidance, and for that we have released courses, right? CLAT 24 is released. We have students who are performing very well, and the change is something that they would adapt to immediately because we are already prepared with it. Now, there are number of benefits that you get after you become a subscriber. You get more than 600 plus hours of learning. We focus on everything when it comes to a competitive exam, and not just CLAT, it caters to every other law entrance test, ALET, JAMIA, QET, all the exams that are there, right? आपको हर एग्जाम की प्रिपरेशन करवाई जाती है. कॉन्सेप्ट बिल्डिंग से लेकर डी डे के एक दिन पहले की रिवीजन तक आपको सारा मटेरियल और सारी प्रैक्टिस दी जाती है, राइट? सो मेक श्योर और make a wise decision, think in your favor if you are really serious about getting into a national university. When will the sample paper release? We cannot say that for sure. Maybe in a month, maybe towards the end of July, but it should come out. Now that the paper, the number of questions have decreased, there is, consortium is also aware of the skepticism that would follow thereafter. So I think they might release it towards the end of July or maybe even before. Let's just see. As soon as the sample paper comes out, we would be the first to inform you and tell you what the paper might contain based on the sample paper, right? So that's it for today, guys. There is another session at 6 in which I would be giving you an analysis of the Hindu from a legal point of view, something that you really need to pay attention to. क्वेश्चंस चेंज हो गए हैं, कंसेप्ट बिल्डिंग पे बहुत ज्यादा ध्यान देना है. यू कैन नॉट टेक एनीथिंग लाइटली, स्पेशली व्हेन वी आर टेलिंग यू. So take that session, try and understand everything, make sure that you are learning everything, and in order to do that, attend as many sessions as you can, especially when they are giving you an information that you won't be able to procure yourself. Right, so I shall see you again at 6. Make sure you all are there. आपको सेशन के साथ साथ, गाइडेंस के साथ साथ उस पीपीटी का मटेरियल भी मिलेगा, और वो मटेरियल आपके कितना काम आ सकता है, आपकी नोट मेकिंग एक्सरसाइज में कितना सिग्निफिकेंटली कंट्रीब्यूट कर सकता है, ये आपको सेशन ज्वाइन करने के बाद ही पता चलेगा. राइट, सो मेक श्योर दैट यू आर लाइकिंग द सेशन, मेक श्योर दैट you are subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. You can follow us on Instagram, you can join our Facebook and Telegram channel, and I shall see you at 6. Everyone, see you till then. Thank you so much.